In 1873, 8 years out from slavery, the eyes of the 7 founders of New Hope Baptist Church were fixed on God. Love Vicki Drake, Maddie Rainey, Emma Robinson, Emma Starks, Jerry Taylor, Sally Taylor, and Lucinda Williams responded to the spiritual, social, economic, and cultural needs of newly freed slaves who had become disillusioned by the failed promises of the Reconstruction era. What freedmen longed for was a collective voice to express their yearnings for justice, equality, and personhood. To that end, the founders met in the log cabin home of Maddie Rainey and prayed for direction in starting a church. Through the American Baptist Home Mission Association, Reverend John Hay was sent to assist in establishing the church, which would be named New Hope, as a symbol of the new hope for the freedmen. On July 27, 1873, New Hope Baptist Church was established, distinguishing it as the first Negro church to be founded by Negroes for Negroes in Dallas. Ministers who guided New Hope and responded to the needs of the Dallas freedmen between 1873 and 1898 were Reverend A.R. Griggs and Reverend E.W.D. Isaac. Reverend Griggs led New Hope in establishing the first elementary school for freedmen and one of Texas's first high schools for freedmen, as well as assisting in the early planning and development of Bishop College. Reverend Griggs emphasized wholesome family structure, dignified and orderly worship service, and Christian accountability. In addition, he is credited with supporting the publication of the Dallas Express, one of the first black newspapers in Texas. The second early pastor of New Hope, who made an impact on the church and the community during Reconstruction, was Reverend E.W.D. Isaac, who in 1890 shepherded New Hope in new methods of teaching Sunday school and pioneered the movement which ultimately became the Baptist Training Union. The period of 1898 to 1925 ushered in the emergence of the Negro Renaissance, an era that focused on cultural identity and a struggle for first-class citizenship. New Hope's new pastor, Reverend Dr. A.S. Jackson, who served from 1899 to 1936, led the church in funding and building a new church, the first large brick building in Dallas, owned and constructed by Negroes. New Hope soon became the center for all cultural, political, and educational gatherings, organizing the Patrons League, an organization designed to expose Dallas to nationally known figures such as Booker T. Washington, Mary Church Terrell, W.E.B. Du Bois, and several other freedom fighters and intellectuals. With Klan activity becoming even more pervasive, Reverend Jackson found it necessary to take a strong stand against racial violence aimed at Negroes. With the close of the Reverend Dr. A.S. Jackson era came his son, Reverend Maynard Jackson, a leader with an even stronger emphasis on spiritual growth, cultural development, and Christian democracy. Reverend Jackson established the Central Forum, which, according to Dr. Banks, became one of the leading platforms from which the voice of the new Negro was heard, and from which the crusade for first-class citizenship in Texas was launched. As leader of the NAACP, leader of the cooperative movement, secretary of the Negro Chamber of Commerce, in 1934, Reverend Maynard Jackson and A. Maceo Smith established the Progressive Voters League, and with the co-leadership of A. Maceo Smith, encouraged Negroes to fight for the right to vote in Texas. In 1936, Jackson organized the State Progressive Voters League to educate and unite qualified voters interested in voting. During 1948 to 1973, New Hope called Reverend Rhett James to the pastorate of the church. His focus, as with previous leaders, was church worship, community outreach, and racial justice. In addition, he encouraged New Hope to focus on expansion and ultimately relocation. And in 1968, led the building of a new church, a splendid edifice, resting on 7.5 acres in South Dallas. Reverend James encouraged the development of Tea International to introduce the community to various cultures, and New Hope Christmas Party Supreme, designed to help underserved children and families. As president of the Dallas chapter of the NAACP, Reverend James assisted in organizing peaceful marches in Dallas to address racial discrimination. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King accepted Reverend James's invitation to speak to a crowd of over 2,500 in Dallas. From 1973 to 1998, two young pastors who had an impact on the life of New Hope were Reverend Victor Hall and Reverend Dr. Derek Hawkins. Reverend Hall focused on guiding the church in a deeper knowledge of the Word through instituting Bible study. He also worked to align New Hope more closely with the National Baptist Convention. Dr. Hawkins focused on developing closer ties to interfaith affiliations within Dallas. To that end, he served as president of the Greater Dallas Community of Churches and was a founding board member of the Dallas Leadership Foundation. Under his leadership, New Hope sponsored Summer of Hope, a program directed by youth pastors that sought to engage children